NHL Finals are here. We've got the Oilers, we've got the Panthers, and we're going to break it down from a props betting perspective. Welcome to Props and Parlays Today. I am Andy from WagerTalk.com, being joined, as always, by my fellow props betting expert, Andrew McGinnis from WagerTalk.com. No time to waste. We're going to get right into it here, Andrew. Let's take a look at shots on goal, because this, to me, is one of the interesting prop categories in this one. You've got a Florida Panthers team that just does a fantastic job at not allowing a lot of shots on goal. Even when they go to overtime, you're seeing these teams just not fire a lot of shots on net. And you know me, I like betting unders. I like betting things that, I like betting things that aren't going to happen because I think the markets are a little bit inflated to the over. So let's take a look at shots on goal here. I'm going to go first. When I want to bet unders, I want to bet unders on the high numbers, and immediately I'm going to Zach Hyman, who had a couple monster games with shots on goal against Dallas, but Dallas is not Florida. And if you're going to give me minus 120 on under 3.5 shots on goal, and this is a Panthers team that in some games allows 22, 23 total shots on goal, I'm going to be all about it. So first shots on goal prop I'm looking at it under is Zach Hyman, mostly because 4 shots on goal is a ton for one player to get against this Florida Panthers team. Shots on goal props, what's your approach in this series?
Yeah, Andy, I think that for me, it's going to be the depth guys for Florida, and it's going to be the star players for the Oilers. And what I mean by that is I'm probably going to look towards unders for guys that aren't the top 3 for the Oilers, and I'm going to look at overs for guys that aren't the top 3. So kind of vice versa here. I think it's going to be a big look. I'll put it this way. I'm not saying the Oilers haven't had depth this year, because this is probably the deepest team they've had, right? But one thing I can say is that every player on the Oilers knows their role. And I get your point, because you do see guys like Hyman and Draisaitl and those guys, they get 3.5, 4.5, these inflated numbers, right? Because of who they are. And I completely understand that, because in a game where Edmonton might get 22 shots in one game, how can these 2 or 3 guys get 12 shots, right? It's just not going to happen. I'm with you on that one. But even, I don't know if I can call Nugent Hopkins a depth piece, but I kind of like him under 2.5. He's someone I'm looking at for his shots on goal under. I'm looking at Evander Kane under 2.5 shots for the Edmonton Oilers. He's a guy that you and I were cashing on to just not get a point for quite some time. But now we'll look at him just under his 2.5 shots on goal. He did have a little mini streak but about 2 weeks ago. But as for now, some of those guys to go under their shots on goal. And, Andy, one thing to continue to mention, the power play points. You were on a great run there with Draisaitl with his power play point. And Edmonton, not only great and the number 1 team during this playoffs in 2024 on the PP, but also a great PK team. So I'm curious to see if Florida will have some of their top guys not getting power play points. You can get a great price on Barkov, Reinhart, Kachuk, some of those guys potentially to not have a power play point. But if you're looking at a guy like Hyman, if you're looking at a guy like even Bouchard, like Bouchard right now to me has become someone that's hard to bet on. And people will say, what do you mean he's hard to bet on? The guy's having a phenomenal year. And the thing is, because the odds continually change. And I remember you always talking about that with the NFL. It's when you see a guy at a certain price for so long, you see a guy at a certain number for so long, you keep on riding it. But I feel like because Evan Bouchard is on the same team as McDavid and Draisaitl, no one is really giving him as much credit. Like, he's putting up close to Cale Makar numbers at this point. And nobody would ever call him Cale Makar because he doesn't skate like him. He doesn't play like he does. But he is someone that you should have in your back pocket as a power play point. And the funny thing is, I think goals might be hard to come by in this series, but the power play is going to be that much more important. How about goalie props, Andy? Have you looked at those ever? I mean, for me, Stuart Skinner, I talked about this on Puck Time. He's gone under 24.5 saves in 5 of his last 6 games. And now some books are showing 27, 28 for his number. So how much different is it for him going against Dallas for going against Florida? I know Florida's not nearly as picky with their shots. They're going to throw as much as they possibly can at Skinner. But to go from 24.5 as the consistent number against Dallas, what the odds makers decided on, and then in this series now to see a 27 and 28, I felt like that was quite a bit of an adjustment. Do you think Florida averages more shots on goal per game in this series than Dallas averages against Edmonton?
I do. I thought Dallas was way too tentative shooting the puck. Soccer, especially like indoor soccer, what do they tell you? Just fire it at the goal. Just fire the ball at the goal. They may not be the best shots all the time, but rebounds, hits the pipe and goes to one of your guys. I felt Dallas was trying to look for the perfect shot, and I thought it cost them a lot. Obviously you can't say, well, if they would have shot it there, they would have scored, but just fire away. And I don't think this Florida team is going to be shy about that. So I actually kind of lean a little bit over with the 27, but I think it's dialed in. I think that number is pretty spot on with what I would expect. The Bobrovsky 24.5 is kind of interesting. I also think that's dialed in a little bit. I almost might go over just a touch. Florida does such a great job. Florida does such a great job at not allowing props. What did we see? 3 overtime games in that one. And that's where unders go to die when you're talking about saves, some of these shots on goals, and things like that. Your points props, if you're taking unders, like I'll get to a couple here in a minute, those are pretty good. But yeah, 3 overtime games. How many props were lost in those 3 overtime games where you're sitting there like, man, I handicapped this perfect and he's going to go over. So I would fight it hard to take an under on these saves because of just how close I think these games are and how good the books have dialed in some of these numbers. One guy that's kind of come along, going back to the shots on goal, guy that's kind of come on strong here. If I'm taking overs in this series on shots on goal, it needs to be 1.5 shots on goal. That's the only number I'm going to look at. Tarasenko for Florida has been a little bit opportunistic. Gone over in 7 out of 10 games, and the last 4 games, 2-5, 2 and 3, and 1.5. Doesn't 1.5 just sound so much less than 2.5? It's like, 1.5, redirect or, a couple shots there, but 2.5, you're like, oh man, he's got to get like a bunch of them. So Tarasenko, it's minus 140. I thought that guy was kind of a value there when you could see he was starting to get a few more shots on goal. And it kind of goes back to your, the secondary shot, guys, nobody's really thinking about Tarasenko overs. And maybe the Oilers are a little bit too keyed on Tkachuk and some of these other guys. There was a couple line moves that I thought were interesting, and we always talk about this when there's a big streak and the books make an adjustment. Look out. And Sam Reinhart was one that his over 2.5 was money, and then the books move it up to 3.5. So you might look at Sam Reinhart under 3.5. Problem is they've got it juiced really, really. They got it juiced really, really big. The other confusing one for me is Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. How they've had to lower his shots on goal to 1.5. This guy's gone over 1 in his last 5 games. And in 3 of those games, he's had 0. How does Nugent Hopkins not have any shots on goal in 3 games? That seems like a complete outlier. And the books are on it because the over is minus 150. Despite the fact he's not been getting over, the books have kind of sniffed that one out. You mentioned points. I was going to bring this up. I'd run this play by you. It's the same game parlay, and it's plus 102 here on DraftKings. And it's simply a combination of Evander Kane to not have a point and the Edmonton Oilers over 1.5 team goals. I have been using this Edmonton over 1.5 team goals parlay piece throughout the entire playoffs, and it has been the gift that keeps on giving. They've only gone under 1 time. 1 game this entire postseason where they had under 1.5 goals. And so it's like you put that with whatever you want. If it's a Formula One week, we put it with Formula One. If it's a French Open tennis week, you put it with, one of the big favorites there. So Evander Kane, and I'm glad you mentioned him. He just had that spurt where it was I think he had 3 or 4 games in a row, and now guess what? He's had 1 point in the last 7 games. And so if he's not getting it done in the last 7 games, find it hard to believe he's going to get it done against Florida. So he's juiced all the way to minus 200. So that's why I would put Evander Kane to not have a point with the Oilers over 1.5. So, and that's one that I would just play every single game. Like I wouldn't pick spots. That's the other thing with a lot of these props. You really got to be consistent with it in this series. Like don't just try and play it in game one, and then if it loses, abandon it in game two. You got to play it every single game with these props. So, what other props are you looking at, Andrew?
Andy, so I kind of mentioned that I'll be looking at depth pieces for Florida and like the star players for Edmonton as far as overs. And I think Sam Bennett might be the perfect guy to describe as a depth piece. I mean, here's the deal. When you look at the Dallas Stars, can we describe them as a physical team? And it's kind of up for debate. Can we describe them as a physical team? It's hard to say, right? Florida is going to be a lot more physical. I think that Edmonton brings more speed than what Florida has had to see. Did you know that New York, Tampa Bay, and Boston are three of the oldest teams in the league? That's the pathway
no, I didn't.
that Florida took to get to the Stanley Cup Finals. So the speed's going to be a lot for the Oilers, or for the Panthers to deal with of the Oilers. But the physicality, I think, is going to be a lot for the Oilers to deal with. So when you think of physicality, you think of greasiness. Well, I think of a guy that McDavid actually grew up playing with his whole childhood, and that's Sam Bennett, the guy that is usually one elbow away from getting a suspension every game, so you better be careful about that. But this guy scores goals in greasy areas. He drives the net. He wants to get under your skin. And you talk about teams and players being tentative and selective with their shots. This guy will shoot whenever he has the opportunity. And the best part is people are complaining these days about the NHL stats people and not counting certain shots. We think it's going to be a shots on goal. You'll know when this guy gets a shot because it's going to be about 4 feet away from the net. He's not shooting anything far away. He's not shooting anything fancy. And to your point, Andy, about not wanting to play something at like 2.5 or even 3.5, really, I'm getting plus 115 on this over 2.5 shots on goal prop. He's someone that I would recommend just kind of, I'm throwing out there as like a player to watch for this series. So if you want to look at his point, I would, they don't offer block shots on him because they mostly give you defensemen. I'd even offer block shots on this guy. To me, he's one of the biggest difference makers in the series for the Florida Panthers. And again, I think the speed for the Oilers will be a problem for the Panthers. I think the physicality of the Florida Panthers will be a problem for the Edmonton Oilers. So how they deal with that, we'll find out. But I think it's really going to be a battle of the depth for Florida versus the star players of the Edmonton Oilers. And for anybody out there that if you have the stones, we'll say, to bet against players like McDavid and Draisaitl and those guys, one thing I can tell you, guys like Barkov, guys like Forsling, that don't get that much credit for their defensive ability, they shut down David Pastrnak. They shut down Nikita Kucherov. They shut down all these top players, Artemi Panarin. They shut down Chris Kreider. So if you are a believer that the Florida Panthers could win, I wouldn't talk anybody off taking some under 1.5 points for McDavid and some of these guys. And especially, Andy, you're getting the 1.5 points on a guy like McDavid, right? And if we think the game one's going to go under, right? Like, let's say we expect the score to be 3-2, and even if the Oilers are on the winning side of it, that means he has to be involved in 2 out of 3 of those plays. It's very hard to do that. So whenever I decide I want to play McDavid to an over in some way, there's always 3 avenues I look at. It's over 1.5 points, it's power play point, or it's shots. But the fact of the matter is, in the regular season, it's a little bit easier to decide. In the playoffs, over 1.5 points is always very tricky because you usually need 4 goals, I'd say, for him to be in on 50%. I mean, he could have a great game and still, if they only score 2 goals, who cares? He's only in on one of them. You cash the under. So it's going to be really interesting. And I wouldn't talk anybody off looking at some unders in this series. It's going to be a really good one. And but Andy, what do you feel about these power play points? Because to me, I think it's a really interesting topic as far as just betting kind of game plan goes. Because I like low scoring games in this series. I think that we're going to see tight hockey. But with that being said, I think there are going to be a lot of power play goals. So it's tricky because, like, how can you take power play goals when you think there's not going to be that many goals in the series?
Yeah. If you're taking a power play point or a goal, I don't think you're looking at the main guys because the value is just not there. I mean, you look at Connor McDavid. It's plus 110 to have a power play point, but he's only done that like 2 out of the last 8 games. So the value is just not there. Yeah, 3 out of the last 10. That's a losing proposition. And then if you look at power play goals, he's got 3 out of 10, but it's plus 155. It's not really a long-term winning play. If you're looking at something to do with power play points, then I would be looking at like Evan Bouchard at plus 160, who's got similar numbers to Connor McDavid to have a power play point, except instead of plus 110 or plus 100, you're getting plus 160. Now, there's one that you can play, and if it hits 2 or 3 games out of the series, you're going to turn a profit on that one. So power play points, I don't know if they really interest me that much because, like you said, I expect it to be low scoring. I mean, the 5.5 number, that was an under machine for the last couple rounds when you're looking, especially at Florida. So there is one play out there that is really jumping off the page for me, and it's minus 166. Most people would say that's probably pretty juicy. This is Sam Reinhart to not have an assist. Andrew, he has 1 game in the last 21 with an assist. This play is hit in 20 out of 21 games. You could put this at minus 300, and this is a very, very much winning proposition. I can't believe it's only minus 166. But on the flip side, out of the last 21 games, he does have a goal in 10 out of them. So it's like Reinhardt's not really involved in the setting up of the goals. He's involved in the actual goal scoring. So that's what's kind of interesting when you look at Reinhardt. He's minus 190 to have a point. There's no reason to lay minus 190 to have a point. You lay plus 145 to have a goal. That's where he's getting all his points. But me, I like the unders. I think it's low scoring games, not a lot of assists. So I love this Sam Reinhart to not have an assist. He's just not been getting it done this year. The only caveat is, for whatever reason, he had an assist in both games against Edmonton this year. However, that was in 2000. That was like literally before the first of the year. So it was way back. So this Edmonton team's a little bit different. So yeah, I got to say Sam Reinhart to not have an assist has got to be my favorite play in this series. Anything else you're looking at for the Oilers and Panthers? Yeah,
I really like what you said there, Andy. It's so cool because let's put it frankly. I mean, a guy like Zach Hyman too. Whenever I've taken him to score a power play point, the guy just scored. Like he's not out there. He's not out there to get assists, man. That's just not what. If McDavid passes him the puck, Hyman's not saying, you know what, McDavid, you take it back. He's going to shoot it himself. He's not going to offer it back to anybody else. But yeah, I think that overall, looking at this series, I think that looking at some ice time for some of these guys, it's going to be interesting because a big thing I've noticed as well about the Oilers is that they've been trying to avoid playing McDavid an absurd amount of time. Draisaitl 27, 26. If you look at their ice time, which I've been looking at a lot over the last few days because I've been anxiously waiting for this series to start, some of these guys like Draisaitl, Hyman, McDavid, well, what's been great about the Oilers is that they've gone down in their ice time. But one thing about the Panthers, and this is why it's great betting unders on their guys, is that their coach, Paul Maurice, he doesn't care who you are and what your name is on the back of the jersey. You're playing around the same time most games. Which is great because, even if the team is down 2 goals, Andy, they're not throwing out Reinhart for more time than usual. They trust their third line as much as their second line, which is really good as far as looking towards some of these unders. Rodriguez is a guy that I was liking for unders as well. I just think that he's someone that's out there being their energy guy. He's out there to create momentum, create some chances and stuff like that. But I can't see him putting the puck on net too many times. I can't see him creating chances for his line mates. the biggest question really is, can the Panthers shut down the top line of the Oilers? And honestly, you hate to sound so cliche, but that's the key in this series. I'd love to be able to tell you that Evander Kane and Nugent Hopkins and Dylan Holloway could beat the Florida Panthers. You and I both know that's not the case. So I feel like if anybody likes the Florida Panthers in some games, you could easily avoid taking the money line in some and just fade some of the top players, as Andy was mentioning off the top, with Draisaitl under 3.5 shots on goal, with McDavid under 1.5 points, and you can make money that way. I still really do like that one. I'll say, from one of my prop it up favorite plays, I do like the under on saves for Stuart Skinner. I still think that's a kind of a market adjustment for, around 4 save difference. And I still respect this Edmonton Oilers defense despite the higher volume of shots from the Florida Panthers compared to the Dallas Stars.
The only other prop I was kind of really looking at, I've been having success with this in NASCAR, where in NASCAR, they have basically 3 manufacturers, and you could take Toyota and Chevy to both win the race at plus money, and they won like every race to start the season. I think it was like 12 straight. I'm looking at the total games in the series, and you can grab 6 games at plus 200 and 7 games at plus 200. I just don't see a wipeout in this series. Like I don't see a sweep. I don't see a 4-1. I think this kind of goes back and forth a little bit. So if you get a series that's extended, you just put a unit on the 6 games, put a unit on 7 games, and as long as it gets that 6 game, you're going to cash 1 unit on that one. So that was only series prop. I was trying to get there on one of the series spreads, but I can't really get there. I think the numbers are dialed in pretty good here. Do you have any opinion on any series props in this one before we move on?
I think Sam Reinhart might have the most shots on goal for the Florida Panthers. And a bet that I made as far as most goals, because I do think that it's going to be top heavy for the Oilers. I think Draisaitl gets the most goals just because his size. I think that he's kind of more built for a series against the Florida Panthers versus McDavid was built for the last few series that they've had. I'm not saying McDavid can't deal with the physicality, but I do think it's going to be a little more of an issue for him than it will be for a bigger guy like Draisaitl. And you said it yourself. I mean, a guy like Reinhart, he's not passing the puck around. When he gets the puck, he's there to shoot and score. So I think he might lead the series in shots.
Love it. If you guys are enjoying the gambling content, please hit the like button. It really helps us out. Just while you're watching us, go and hit the like button, leave us a comment, tell us what you like about the series. Fascinating series, tons of props. So just let us know what you're liking in the comment section below. I really, really appreciate it. And thanks everyone for taking time out of your day to watch us. Hope we can help you turn a profit in these series games. Andrew, we're going to move on we'll talk a little UFC, talk a little CFL, but real quick, tell everyone what you have up going into this weekend at WagerTalk.com.
Andy, super excited. 5% CFL play goes on Saturday. 10-2 run with the 5% CFL plays plus 40 units on those. I didn't plan on having one in week 1, but a line stuck out to me right away, and I had to jump all over it. And there's so much line movement in the CFL that we definitely recommend you guys using that code AMCFL to take $100 off my full CFL season. It's really cheap right now. For my CFL season. People are taking advantage of it. But guys, next week, that deal will not be there anymore. So you'll be paying more after week 1 for the rest of the season than you will be right now before week 1 pretty much gets going. We had a game last night. Cashed a prop last night, Andy, in the CFL. It's widely available now, making me really happy with that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Every year that we do this show, there's more markets and more sports offering more and more props. So some of these things that we haven't had a chance to talk about, in years past or in seasons past, we could actually talk about WNBA props. I've never seen this many WNBA props. And they've been really good if you can find the right spots. Caitlin Clark under points, rebounds, and assists. So there's some really good spots that you can hit night in and night out. I've got a weekend pack up. We've got a few plays here. We got a UFC official best bet that is up. We've got a cross sport parlay that is up, and we've got a couple of cross plays that are looking fantastic. Put those all in one pack. No promo code needed. just grab that pack. We got 4 best bets, and anything else that we put up for this weekend will be in there. So it's a smoking deal. 4 plays right now. I would expect there to be 1 to 2 more plays. So one price gets you 4 plays. UFC's been running great, 13-5 in those last 18 UFC plays. Lacrosse has been fantastic, number 1 lifetime at WagerTalk, and cross-sport parlays, 14-6 out of our last 20. So everything in that pack has been very, very good. We're on a very good run in all those. So no promo code needed. Just grab that pack over at Andy Lang at WagerTalk.com. Andrew, let's touch on a little bit in UFC. At the time of recording this, they are right in the middle of weigh-ins. It looks like most people have made it. They're still waiting on another couple. I'll give a couple props that I think are worth playing. This Cody Stamann and Taylor Lapilus fight, I see no way that this fight goes under. So that's a good parlay piece. Neither of these guys are finishers. The striking doesn't scare anybody. Their wrestling and grappling doesn't scare anybody. This could be a fairly fight. So I would look at that one to go the distance. As long as Eduardo Mora makes weight, which that's the one that I'm a little bit worried about. This line has been moving more and more towards the under. It was plus money under 2.5. Now it's minus 125. I don't know if you've missed the move or not, but if Mora wins, it's going to be because she just mauls Denise Gomes on the ground, and she is a finisher on the ground. Her ground and pound submission game is great. If Gomes is going to win, it's probably going to be a flash knockout on the feet. So the under in that one might be worth it. The Andrea Lee and Montana De La Rosa, that fight should go the distance. Neither of those women are finishers, and they both got pretty decent cardio and good defense. So that one should be fun. And then I got a couple interesting ones here. I think this Dustin Stoltzfus Bruno Ferreira fight goes over 1.5 at plus 100. Bruno Ferreira is a first round knockout guy, but if he doesn't knock you out early, he doesn't have much left. And I think Stoltzfus has fought a few guys like this where he needs to weather the early storm, stay out of harm's way, and then he can pull away late. I think Stoltzfus extends this fight, gets out of the first round, and then wears Ferreira down. I think plus 240 on Stoltzfus is a really good one, but it's a live bet. But I think the over 1.5 is a very interesting one. And then last one, the Jared Cannonier and Nasruddin Imavov. To me, that's a complete yawner. I have no interest in watching 5 rounds of these guys fight, and it is going to be 5 rounds. It's going to go the distance. Cannonier's like 40, he's coming off a knee injury. I'm not sure he's that powerful. Nasruddin Imavov is the definition of a bathroom break fight if I've ever seen it. I can't believe they're putting him in main events. It's not that exciting. So those are a few parlay pieces and props for UFC. I don't know if you have any thoughts on the UFC event this weekend, Andrew.
So Andy, one thing I've gotten better at is finding ways to make money on the ones that are the bathroom break fights, or the drink break, or the take a shot break, whatever you're doing on your Saturday night. But this fight's one of them, and obviously it's going to be pretty late either way. But plus 225 for Imavov by decision. That's the price I like, and that's the play I'm going to go with here. Forget about the money line. Forget about any up and down with the totals here. To me, this one, as you mentioned, is going to be a snooze fest. And the biggest difference for me when I was breaking down this fight, just the amount of damage I think Cannonier will absorb versus Imavov is going to be the difference. Just the output difference, I think, is just that much better for Imavov versus Cannonier. I think Cannonier will be a little bit more risky, I guess, put himself in harm's way a lot more. I also think that the odd submission attempt for Imavov will cause some stress and cause some confusion there for Cannonier, which I think could keep him guessing and open things up for the striking. So I think you kind of have more of a well-rounded guy. And we cashed last weekend. He had Strickland by points. I'll tell you what, we got there pretty late, though, with the price. On Friday, when I gave that out, I think it was like 140 or 150. Some people earlier in the week got plus 200, and we tried to go with price. I gave out price in the show, and I was like, yeah, that guy's going to win, but he's only winning by finish. And then it goes the distance. So, I mean, look, I gave you a winner, sort of, but then it, didn't finish inside. But, yeah, this is one of those weeks. That's the only play I have so far. And I got to say, Andy, I really like that plus 225 price on Imavov by points.
I like it. I like it. We got a question in the chat. Nick was wanting to know. McDavid, most points in the series. I got to be honest. I didn't look at it. I figured McDavid would be the overwhelming favorite. It's plus 140. Not bad. Not bad. It's a low scoring. We think it's going to be a low scoring series, so maybe not a ton of plays in this one. But you brought up that you thought Florida was going to do a pretty good job on McDavid. Is there value plus 140 at Connor McDavid most points in the series?
You know, Andy, strictly just based on the specialty teams. I know you did mention he's like, what I think you said, like 3 of the last 8 or something like that. But strictly because of that, I think it's a factor. It makes it that much different. I think because of the speed of the Oilers, they're gonna draw penalties. They're gonna draw tripping penalties. They're gonna draw hooking penalties, which will take them on the power play, and they're gonna make a difference. And McDavid will get points there. I think he's probably the best bet. I would probably say Barkov for the Florida Panthers would be a good one as well. I think that as much as I mentioned the depth players there for Florida, Barkov has been he's a guy that could very sneakily get like a handful of points, and they're not fancy goals, Andy, that end up on SportsCenter highlights. You know, he's a guy that's going to get that nice assist that sets up the guy for the fancy play, and sometimes that makes the biggest difference. So maybe Barkov there. One thing I'll say, and you know, I'm not throwing Carm under the bus here, but me and Carm had a discussion. It was kind of funny. You know how when someone says to you, Andy, like, how could anybody ever bet this? And then you're like, I will. So he said, how could anybody bet, you know, the futures at this price, or a Conn Smythe trophy at this price? And if you look at some of the prices, and you look at the Conn Smythe price for the Oilers, or for McDavid, excuse me, you're thinking to yourself, well, why the hell would I play that when I can just play the Oilers to win each game or win the series? But if you're going to give me a plus price still on a guy, it's plus 130 for them to win the series. And some books have like plus 150, 60, 70. Some books have some really good prices on this guy to win the MVP of the finals, of the playoffs. Let's be real here. They're not winning without him being their MVP. If anybody out there likes the Oilers, and this is why it makes me laugh when people look at betting splits so much. Sure, it's okay to look at that stuff, but it's the same thing to me. And you know, when you look at NFL Sunday, right? A lot of people that are, instead of betting a plus 3.5 dog, what are they doing, Andy? They're betting the money line outright on the dog. So it messes up with those splits. Same thing here. I think if anybody likes the Oilers to win the series, you have to take McDavid, Conn Smythe winner. And I'll keep putting it out there on the record. I think I've mentioned it 3 times on Prop It Up, but the price has gotten worse every single week. I believe that if the Florida Panthers win, their goaltender Bobrovsky is the reason. I think he will win the Conn Smythe trophy.
Love it. Love it. Thanks for the question, Nick. Appreciate you. Let's talk just a quick little CFL here before we get out of here. Watched the game last night, and I was just like, oh, why didn't I take the under? Week 1 mistakes and sloppy play just leads to unders in the CFL. And sure enough, I mean, really not even close to getting to the over. You got the Alouettes just this is weird. Had the Alouettes mastered turnovers in the CFL? Had they been the team that is just, you know, because at some point it's not an accident, you know? It's like some of these players in the NFL, like 10 years ago when guys realized, like, you know, once a running back gets past the first down marker, don't worry about tackling him right there. Go for the strip. You know, who cares if he rushes for 12 yards or 18 yards? Go for the strip and wait for reinforcements. And I don't know if you have, I haven't seen any other team besides Alouettes do that. Sure enough, they get a massive fumble that completely changed the game on the punt. And it was just an under. So now I'm looking at the BC Lions and the Argonauts, 47.5. And I'm going, do we have week 1 jitters? And Argonauts, surely their offense isn't going to be putting up a ton of points here. Anything that we learned from last night's game that's going to affect any of your plays this weekend?
Anything I learned? Well, I learned that Winnipeg has a really bad offensive line. That's one thing I learned. So we'll try and use that to make some money potentially down the way. I learned that overall, Montreal, as much as you said about their defense, and I agree with you, and I was kind of crapping on them on social media, their offense actually isn't bad. Their offense actually is deep. They did lose a guy last night due to injury. Same thing with Winnipeg. Their offense has weapons. So if they can have that defense, and I love what you said there, Andy, it's not an accident. It's not an accident to keep doing it, forcing these turnovers. But if they can do that and their quarterback can consistently find guys downfield, they're going to be dangerous once again. And another thing I'll say, one thing we learned, and it's a perfect example of it. This year, Andy, I'm going to go on record. The East is not going to be the West whipping boy anymore. The East is not going to get their asses kicked every time they play the West. Last year, I think at one point it was felt like it was 11-1. Like the West, anytime they played the East, parlay piece. Yep, West versus East. There you go. Not anymore. Not anymore. And are you betting props for the CFL, Andy?
I need a couple weeks. I'm staring very hard at the BC Lions minus 265 as a parlay piece. I haven't put it with anything yet, but as you know, last year the CFL, they were the parlay piece kings. It was take a couple of the big favorites every week. I mean, the Argonauts, my heart broke when my bankroll's heart broke when the Argonauts lost their quarterback. They were just the parlay piece that kept on giving. So I have not dipped into player props this much. But man, that BC Lions and Argonauts, I mean, what a story the props tell you. Vernon Adams, his over under for passing yards is 300. Cameron Dukes, 230.5. This is a 70 yards difference. And that's an entire drive that they're putting in the difference. So it leads me to look at the under in that game, but it'll be a week or two before I start putting any props in based on what I saw last night. I just saw a lot of volatility and a lot of tough spots to read there. So
I've got just one for the show for today. There's one for the show, and it's for tonight's game. It's a little bit higher, but we're going to go the over on rushing yards for James Butler, running back for the Hamilton Tiger Cats. West Coast game here in Calgary, Alberta, against the Calgary Stampeders. It's a 9-man league, guys. 9-man league. Last year, the Stampeders ranked number 8 as far as rushing yards allowed per game. The only team that was worse than them as far as their rushing defensive numbers, the Edmonton Elks. And the Edmonton Elks are just the laughingstock of the league. And we'll see how long it takes for them to lose that title. But over 74.5 is the number on Butler. Taking a look at some of last year's numbers. Ended the year with a 13 rushes for 83-yard performance. He also had a 25 rushes versus Saskatchewan for 107-yard performance. The last time he played the Stampeders, he had 14 rushes, Andy, for 92 yards. So even though we're in the 70s here, it's week 1. Sometimes it's very simple. You open up the website, you find out where a team struggles, and you fade that position. And I think the running defense, because what's funny is that Calgary's passing defense is actually pretty good, but their rush defense is horrible. And really quick, Andy, I know we're on short on time. I got to mention this. As far as we always say, shop around, shop around, shop around. Everyone loves to say this. So I'm sure you're aware of those sites like Underdog Fantasy, Parlay Play, Prize Picks, all those different ones. I rarely use them, but I like to use them to kind of look around to see what the odds are and numbers are for everybody. Listen to this. This is how confused people are about CFL. So on Prize Picks right now, Bo Levi Mitchell's passing yards are 239.5. You want to guess what his number is at DraftKings? 261.5.
260. It's crazy.
260.5.
It is.
Yeah.
That's a middle if I've ever seen it.
That's pretty uncommon to have that much of a difference. So I'll put it out there. If you guys like the under, you know where to go. If you like the over, you know where to go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great stuff. And thanks everyone for joining us. Go and hit the like button. Leave us a comment. Go check out Andrew's 5% CFL play. if Andrew's 5% CFL plays, they're 10-2 last year. Like you almost have to add them every single week. Not almost. You have to add them every single week. There's not too many plays that hit at that rate. So go grab that over at WagerTalk.com. I'm Andy. I've got my weekend packed up. It includes UFC. We've got some lacrosse plays in there, Formula One, and cross sports parlay. One price gets you 5 plays. Good luck on your plays, everyone, and we will see everyone next time on Props and Parlays Today.